Hey guys, so you may be aware that my KSP videos all got falsely copyright claimed and demonetized. I went through my hard drive and I still had the original raw footage for this video, so I'm able to re-edit it and re-render it without the music. I like to think that my videos have some level of rewatchability, so if you'd like to check it out again, I would hugely appreciate you doing so. But anyway, I'm going to stop talking now and let the original video play out without the original music though. Thank you and enjoy. It is an exciting week this week, my friends, because on this week, Apollo 11 fired its engines and became the first mission to ever successfully put men on the moon. And so, a lot of my contemporaries in the Kerbal space program field have been doing their own little tribute missions. In fact, I myself have already done a kind of Apollo celebration this week. I made a video of like all my MUN missions played simultaneously. It was great, but I thought I'd do a serious tribute to the crew and mission of Apollo 11 in this video here, and I was trying to think of a good appropriate mission to do, because I've already done several Saturn V recreations and Apollo style MUN missions in general, so I was thinking of like how to spice it up, make it a little bit different. And whilst I was thinking of potential tributes for Apollo 11, it dawned on me that there is actually already a tribute Easter egg, an Apollo 11 tribute Easter egg built into Kerbal's space program, kind of. It's a memorial to Neil Armstrong, who, as I'm sure you are aware, was the first man to step foot on the moon, who tragically passed away in 2012. So to celebrate him and pay homage, there is a big kind of statue on the MUN in Kerbal's space program. So I thought, we'd go and visit this statue, we can land on it, take some pictures, and I'm going to take this opportunity to show you how to get there as well. So if you follow along with this video, you too can get there. So here is our rocket on the launch pad. It's really nothing special. It's basically just a direct descent MUN lander. It's not important. It's not the focus of this video, so I just wanted to make a rocket that would just work. It's got a bit more fuel than what we will really be needing, just because when you're landing in very specific spots, especially if we want to do some hopping so we can actually land on the statue itself, it can be a little bit tricky to do it with like the quote-unquote correct amount of fuel. You always want a little bit more, just because you end up burning a bit more fuel than you would normally use when you're trying to get a slightly more accurate landing. So for the record, you may have noticed in the building, I clipped some golden tanks into the lander to kind of give it a more goldy finish and to give it a bit more delta V. The thing actually does still land on the MUN and then is able to return without those clipped tanks, just in case. I know some people don't like it when I offset fuel tanks into each other. This lander does still completely work without those fuel tanks there, and in fact I'm pretty sure I didn't actually need the extra delta V that they provided, but I have made this rocket available to download in the description if you'd like to download it yourself, and it's for people that aren't necessarily quite as good as, or don't fly quite as efficiently as I managed to do in this mission. It's just nice to have that extra bit of wiggle room if you're trying to execute this sort of mission yourself. But there goes the first stage. We're now well into the burn of stage 2, and you can see we're using the Wolfhound Engine from the Making History expansion pack. The Wolfhound Engine is a phenomenal engine. It is very, very, very powerful for what it is, and it's going to be doing the rest of our burn all the way to orbit. It's then going to circularize our spaceship, and then it's going to actually perform our burn that will get us on an encounter to the MUN. So going to be a lot of maneuvering done with this stage here. So the first thing we're going to do is create a maneuver node at our apoapsis to circularize ourselves, and then once we've done that, we can start thinking about plotting a course to the MUN itself. Now, I'm going to talk about this now because it will come up in just a second. I'm going to show you how to get to the Neil Armstrong Memorial just by kind of looking really and picking out landmarks on the MUN surface. You can use a probe with KerbNet to kind of scan for anomalies and locate it that way, and that probably is technically the better way of doing it because it makes it easier to track on the nav ball, but this is a bit more of a lazy approach, and it's also a bit easier because you haven't got to send like a probe up or anything as well. So this is going to be showing you how to locate it using landmarks. You don't need to bother with sending probe cores and stuff up there, but I know if I don't mention it now, someone will tell me in the comment section that I did everything wrong and I suck at this game and I could have just done a KerbNet scan. So this is me now prefacing saying yes, we can do that, but this is also a way of doing it that is probably easier for most people because you don't have to bother with the scanning and all of that shebang. I mean, I still remember playing this game before KerbNet was added, and this is how I found all the Easter eggs, so you don't really need KerbNet if you really want to find Easter eggs. You can just look up their coordinates and do it that way. I guess if you don't want to look up their coordinates on Google, then you do need to use KerbNet, but I'm showing you where it is. So now you know. So I'm going to go on a slightly tilted orbit here. The reason for this is because the Armstrong Memorial is not quite along the Mons equator. So we're going to go for an ever so slight tilt just to make it easier to get an accurate landing at the memorial site. Then we're going to just lower our periapsis to be kind of within the Mun surface. So when we detach the lower stage, it's going to crash into the surface of the Mun and not remain stuck in space. And then we can quickly raise our periapsis again so the lander itself does not meet the same fate. And here we are in the Mun's sphere of influence itself, so we can go ahead and plot a maneuver node at Periapsis in order to get a circular orbit, and then I guess we can just time warp down and get ready to execute that burn. I've got a stage here comprised of 4 Terrier engines. We don't really need 4 Terriers, but it gives us a lot of extra thrust. Again, you really want a little bit more thrust to weight ratio and a little bit more fuel than you would otherwise need if you're going to kind of go for a very specific landing spot, especially if we're going to do some like hopping with the lander to get ourselves up onto the memorial statue as well, rather than just on some land next to it. So that's the logic behind having slightly more engines and slightly more fuel than what we really need. So you can see me time warping on the map screen here because I'm looking for the specific crater that the Armstrong Memorial resides in. And it's this crater here. I'm going to mark out some landmarks for you. It's kind of this big round shape. Obviously, it's a crater with a little tail. There's a valley above it and 2 little spots below it in the form of smaller craters, I suppose. That's the crater you're looking for. It's pretty easy to find when you compare it to other ones. If we zoom in a little bit, you can see this formation here. There's like a sort of 2 little craters and 3 one on top of the other. Looks a bit like a snowman with a big head that's falling over. We're going to zoom in here. See where this little red circle is? That's where the Armstrong Memorial is. So that's the spot we need to aim for. So I'm going to create a maneuver node. And as you can see, I got quite lucky. Our orbit pretty much passes perfectly over that. I'm going to call it the snowman the snowman formation from now on. So it's fine. You may want to adjust your orbit slightly, or when you do your maneuver node to decelerate, you can just use the normal and anti-normal nodes to adjust your inclination accordingly. Like I said, we've got enough fuel in this lander to kind of compensate for any adjustments we might need to do. So I've made it so our actual trajectory will take us slightly beyond the snowman formation, just because it's such a ridiculous name, just because we're obviously going to be killing off quite a lot of our horizontal speed once we see the memorial. So we're not going to focus too much on our horizontal location because we'll kill all that off quite quickly because we've got a good amount of thrust to weight ratio on this craft. So we're going to decelerate like this, and now we're just going to coast down. And then we're going to just eyeball look for the memorial itself. So one thing you can do to enhance your ability in searching for it, because this is no Monarch, it's very small relatively. So what you can do, you can hold down Alt on the keyboard and scroll. What this does, it changes your field of view. So it basically enlarges or diminishes, depending on which way you scroll. It will enlarge the background to make things on the surface much easier to see. And you'll see me doing this in just a second. You know, we can't see the memorial, and then when I do it, it will become visible. So you can see that spot. Remember the one I pointed to in where that red circle was in that picture? That's what we're aiming for. So kind of between those first 2 craters to the left of the snowman. Oh, so we're getting closer. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to scroll by holding down Alt and then bring the background into view. And what is that? On the surface, I see a dot. That's all we got. It's very, very small. But I think that might be it. And you know what? This is actually genuinely the first time I've ever been to the memorial. I did check. I high predated a probe town just so I knew where it was. But that was the first time I've ever actually kind of been to the Armstrong Memorial. Was on this week. So this is kind of an experience for all of us, I think. So now I'm just going to basically eyeball it and just fly myself down very, very, very inefficiently during our descent. So just by controlling our lateral velocity, we can get ourselves closer and closer. Our thrust weight ratio, like I said, on this rocket is very good. So our vertical velocity is not too much of an issue because we'll be able to kill that off relatively quickly. So we may as well just focus more on our trajectory than our vertical speed. As long as it's below like 70 or so meters per second, it should be fine. And there is the monolith on which the memorial rests coming into focus. We can time warp down. At this point, I was like, yep, that was definitely it. At first, I was like, I hope it's not just like one of the weird landmarks from Breaking Ground. But nope, it is definitely the Armstrong Memorial. So now would be a good time to open up our landing gear and perform our final sort of bursts of deceleration so we can commence a nice gentle touchdown. We've got really big landing gear, so this thing can sustain pretty hard impacts, but I think for kind of realism's sake and just to avoid any risk of damaging the craft, we can slow down nice and gently. I always try and keep it to about 1 meter per second or slower for my MUN touchdowns, but there we are. At this point I was pretty happy, but I was like, you know what, let's try and get ourselves on the monolith. I did promise myself that we would land on the Memorial if the footprint of this lander permitted it, and it looks like it does, so we can just coast our way up and land on it. As you can see, we've got a nice little Apollo style, well, it is an Apollo lander carved out of the rock, as well as an American flag flying backwards at this point, much like the military uniforms. But on the other side of the Memorial that you can't see at the moment, you'll see the actual plaque that commemorates it. There it is. What a beautiful camera angle. There we are. There you can see it. So yeah, a little nice. I think that's a nice, tasteful memorial to Neil Armstrong in this game. And there is the American flag there. In fact, I mentioned earlier that the American soldiers have the American flag backwards like that on their uniforms. And the reason for this, which I thought was quite interesting, this is like one of those random facts I just know for some reason, is because when they're carrying the flag over their shoulder, obviously the flag will be backwards because they're carrying it over their shoulder, so it'll be fluttering backwards. So it's backwards on the uniform, like shoulder, to mimic that. I think. I don't know. This is like a pub quiz fact. It could be totally off, but that's what I heard. That's why the American flag is backwards on army shoulders, on uniform shoulders. Don't want to say army because I'll annoy people in the Air Force or something like that. But you know what I mean, guys. That's why the flag is backwards. This is a very strange tangent. I'm going to move on. There are our 4 Kerbals. Yep. I kind of made my own custom command pod by clipping the Mark 1 cockpit into the Mark 3. Is it called the Mark 3 cockpit? I don't know. The Apollo style. I always call it the Apollo style one to make kind of one big command module, so we can bring all of the 4 badass, can I say that without getting demonetized? I don't know. Badass Kerbals in the game. So that is Jebediah, Bob, Bill, and Valentina. And speaking of Valentina, she's pretty happy with the pose. She's going to do some quick illumination shots of the lander. And then I guess there's not much more to do other than, re-embark our spaceship and get ready to return back to Kerbin. As I'm sure it doesn't really need saying, our return to Kerbin is going to be pretty easy, easier than most of my MUN missions, just because A, it's not an SSTO space plane that we need to kind of accelerate on the ground before we take off, and it's also not a mission that involves rendezvous. So as far as my MUN missions go, this is probably one of the easier ones I've ever done. So it's going to be a very, very simple takeoff. Bill is the last Kerbal to board, so he gets the private suite at the top of the craft all to himself. We can retract that ladder for no reason at all and then get ready to commence our burn. I'm going to burn 90 degrees along the nav ball just because it's the most efficient course to take because it goes with the MUN's rotation, but I guess it doesn't really make too much of a difference on the MUN because its surface gravity is relatively low. Certainly doesn't make as much difference compared to places like Tylo, Eve or Kerbin. But we are just burning home. Look at those Kerbals getting, well, Valentina and Jebediah are at least having fun. Bob, not quite so much. And we're going to open the nav ball. Just watching our up-ups is going to let it get to a nice, safe altitude. I usually aim for about 20,000 meters because that just seems like a nice... Oh, I guess I'm going for 15,000 in this case. I usually go for between 10 and 20 is a pretty safe altitude. As you may know from the last episode in my Lowne Aerospace series in which we went to the MUN, which I was going to do the next episode today, but I felt this was a really good opportunity to showcase the Neil Armstrong monument that not many people probably know about. I mean, I've wanted to show it off in the past, but I've never really found good context for showing it, but I feel like today, this is the best chance I'm probably going to get for showcasing the Neil Armstrong Memorial, so... This is why I'm doing it today. And next week, hopefully, unless anything else happens in news, it will be going back to Lowne Aerospace. So we have about 550 meters per second of delta V remaining in our lander stage, so more than enough fuel to get us back to Kerbin. I'm actually not doing a particularly efficient exit from MUN orbit here, but I just wanted to get home quickly and wanted to make sure that we re-entered the atmosphere and subsequently landed on the surface on the light side of the planet, just for the sake of having a more aesthetically pleasing YouTube video, because YouTube's compression algorithms tend to make videos very dark, so I always try and make it so that when things happen in videos they happen during the day. So that's why I'm going for a slightly less efficient than would otherwise be necessary exit from MUN space. But there you go, there's the maneuver node all plotted and done, so we can just time warp around and get ready to execute the maneuver node burn. But I guess I can now tick off the Neil Armstrong Memorial from the list of Easter eggs I've not yet visited in Kerbal Space Program. What else is there that I've not been to yet? I think I've done most of them. I don't think I've ever done a mission, like a video, where I try and find one of the green monoliths, but I don't really find that sort of thing. I don't really have much interest in trying to find a green monolith. I've not been to the Kraken, I don't think. I don't know if that's a spoiler. A lot of people get annoyed when people talk about Easter eggs, even though I feel like it's one thing to like spoil that they exist, but like they're so hidden that you're never going to find it just by naturally playing the game, I don't think. So whatever, I won't say where they are, but there's the dead Kraken, the giant Kerbal face, the buried Curiosity rover, the pyramids, and I think that's it. I visited a few of the Easter eggs in Green Harvest and Expedition Eve, so I don't think there's that many left to do. And I think in terms of how I would rank the Neil Armstrong, maybe there's a video, isn't it? Ranking the Easter eggs, top 10 epic Easter eggs in Kerbal Space Program. God, it makes me cringe just saying that out loud. So it'd be perfect for my channel. But yeah, no. I think in terms of kind of how the Armstrong Memorial would rank in terms of coolness of an Easter egg, I think it ranks pretty highly, and I think, you know, it's a nice, as I said, a nice tasteful tribute to Neil Armstrong, and by extension, you know, the Apollo 11 mission. So this is my actual Apollo 11 celebration this week, even though I did kind of do the joke post earlier. This is like the serious one, but I do Kerbal videos on Saturdays, and everyone else is uploading their Apollo tributes earlier in the week, and so I had to get something done, but I didn't really have a proper Kerbal video made at that point because I have a job in the week, and so I can't really do anything too active, so I could throw together something silly in like half an hour. But missions like this that take a bit more effort, I have to kind of wait till I have a bit more time on like a Friday night or something. So that's why my tribute was a bit later than everyone else's, but I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. So we can just, fast forward through the parachute descent, and here we are touched down in this lush meadow with lots of trees. And this is actually stock. I often get, whenever I have trees show up in videos, people always ask me what mod adds the trees, and it's part of the game. The stock KSP does have trees, just not in the biome immediately surrounding the Kerbal Space Center, and a lot of the other biomes as well, hence why people seem to think that it's a mod. But no, there are no mods here, at least mods that add to the trees. Those are part of the stock game. And Bob, he loves trees, you know. He wanted to see, I'm sure I saw a post on the subreddit that said you can climb trees. So I thought, let's go and climb a tree with Bob. So he's very slow runner. So I'm just going to fast forward, play the footage back a little bit faster whilst we make our way to the tree. But he's found his target. We're going to try and climb it. And, well, I think Bob's face says it all there. His disappointment is immeasurable, and his day is ruined. On screen there are some links. The one on the left is a link to a video chosen for you by YouTube's recommendation algorithm. The one on the right is just my most recent upload. There's also a link to subscribe and check out the Patreon on screen. There's also links in the description to Instagram, Twitter, merchandise, all that good stuff. And there's also the Discord. I hope you enjoyed this video, my friends, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend.